Okay, welcome everyone to our launch webinar. We're really happy for you to be here and so excited to start off the year talking to you about Landmatch. We have a lot of great content to share with you. There's going to be quite a broad range of things to cover, and we also have two fantastic speakers, one from the Landseeker perspective and one from the landowner perspective, who'll be speaking on their experiences later on. So we're really grateful, David and Holly, for being here, and thank you so much. Um, yeah, we are going to have two Q&A slots in this session. The session is due to be an hour and a quarter, and we'll try our absolute best to keep to time. The first Q&A slot is going to come after we've given the sort of content, the main overarching what is Landmatch England all about, what is the background and how it works, and where you can find us. And we'll also be introducing a sister project called Pathways to Land. Then have a Q&A slot. Then we have our speakers, the Landseeker and landowner perspective, and we'll have another Q&A slot after that. So I hope that, yeah, any questions you have, please start putting them in the chat. My colleague Hannah is going to start fielding them and making sure that they're all noted and either answered or circled back to when we come and do the Q&A. And hopefully we'll have lots of great questions to answer, and it'll be really nice to hear what you're interested in and yeah, what sort of questions you have for us. We'll be happy to answer anything. My name's Cordelia. I'm working in the Northwest as the regional coordinator, and my background is in many things, but one of the organisations I was working for was Shared Assets, who has been one of the partners developing this land matching project a few years ago, and now sit on our steering group along with some of our other lovely speakers today, Susie and Hattie. So yes, I've been in this sort of world for a few years and just so excited to be part of the project and working with people in the Northwest. I'm going to introduce my colleagues, Hannah and Rachel. So Rachel.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Forster, and I'm the Central Coordinator for the Landmatch England project. And I also work for Tamar Grow Local CIC down in Cornwall, where I work on our Farm Start scheme, supporting new entrants onto land, and also specifically with our online farmers market called Tamar Valley Food Hubs, and supporting local producers with routes to market in our area. And I've also been working on this land match project for the past few years, so have been part of the research and development phase and bringing it to launch point with our colleagues in our steering group and on the team. So I'll pass over to Hannah.
Hello, everybody. I'm Hannah Paget, and I am the regional coordinator for the Southwest for Landmatch England. I've been working with the working group, or I started working with the working group back in 2022 in my previous role with Ecological Land Cooperative. So I've been working in land access for a little while, and yeah, so it was great to be able to come onto this project and support the Southwest with the matches and see the project through. Back
Wonderful.
to you.
Thanks so much, both. Let's get started with an overview from Rachel about what we're here for and what we're all about. Please take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, this session is really heartening to see so many people coming along this evening to find out more. But this session is to outline how the new Landmatch England project is able to support land seekers, landowners, food and farming organisations, and anyone interested in what the potentials of land matching are. Our aim is to improve land access for farmers and growers with an emphasis on specific support for new entrants or those looking to scale up, and widening access for land for people from more marginalised groups for food and farming businesses. This is to support a more diverse community in food and farming and supporting landowners looking to equitably share land. We're currently delivering an England-wide scheme, whilst also testing out a regional approach to land matching. How this is working is that we have a centralised website, landmatchengland.org, to take in registrations for land seeker requirements and then also for land offers across the country. In the Southwest and Northwest, where we have received additional funding, We have coordinators embedded in networked local organisations working in food farming and training. So we have Cordelia working with Les up in Lancaster in the northwest, and Hannah working alongside Bristol food producers in the southwest. I am then coordinating the other regions of England. Taking a regional approach enables us to provide a service based on local knowledge of landscape and tapping into the communities there, whilst delivering effective regional signposting, peer support networking, tailored resources, help with business planning, and in-person facilitation wherever possible. As well as working with private landowners, we're also keen to help charities, trusts, councils, organisations reach land seekers with the aim of creating more economic activities through new businesses starting, and also to increase social resilience through opportunities for learning together, mentoring, and cross-generational interaction. We're not only open to traditional models of farming, we're also keen to support enterprise stacking arrangements, joint ventures, and alternative businesses such as community supported agriculture schemes and not-for-profit enterprises. Agroecological and regenerative farming is promoted through our project, but not to discourage traditional farmers and growers from applying who may be looking to transition or are already on the pathway to regenerative land management and are able to support people who would like to farm agroecologically. We're also looking through this project to facilitate learning of the history of land ownership and the connection with historic and current patterns of systemic inequality, and encourage a change in thinking around land ownership and management. And we're partnering with Pathways to Land, who we'll hear from a bit more later on. So our aims this year, in our first delivery year, is to shout about the service and get the word out as much as possible. So we'll be attending regional and national events and also hosting a series of webinars across the year. We're hoping to improve land access across the country by facilitating proceedable and lasting matches and partnerships. We're going to be working with landholders and landowners this year to understand the needs that they have in order to build confidence in the process of land matching or sharing land. And we're going to be continuously evaluating and working collaboratively to ensure the service is meeting need, and at the same time looking at ways that we can extend our reach and support package into the other regions of England. And we're looking to demonstrate the need primarily for a not-for-profit England-wide land match service to run along the excellent state-funded services that are in place in Wales and Scotland. At this point, I'd love to bring in Hattie Richards, who's on the call from Land Workers Alliance, just to chat ever so briefly about a recent briefing paper that Land Workers Alliance have submitted to Parliament. Hattie, you on the call?
Yes, I am, Rach.
Ah, great.
Thanks for that. Hi. Brilliant to see everyone here tonight. It's really wonderful to have everyone together to talk about the launch. I'm Hattie. I work for Land Workers Alliance, as Rach said, and I sit on the steering group with Shared Assets CSA Network and Tamar Grow Local. And as Rach said, I'm just going to literally say a couple of minutes about a recent briefing paper that LWA wrote, in case who's interested in anyone sort of reading it or following it up with me. So as Rachel, I think, began to say, or didn't say, not sure, England is actually the only UK nation without a land matching scheme. And we know that those schemes in the other nations work really, really effectively, and they make a really compelling case for how effective services like this are. So we know there's like a really clear need for a long-term service in England, which is why we set up Landmatch England. But we also believe that without like infrastructure in place for really the long term to support the establishment of like tenancies and joint ventures, there is a risk that the number of tenant farmers in England continues to decline. So we really want to make the case for a publicly supported service in order to ensure the sustainability of this brilliant initiative post-grant funded stage. And so, yeah, to this end, LWA have created a briefing document which proposes just that, a government-funded service, along with several other complementary policy changes which would really help facilitate access to land for new entrants and landless farmers, and in turn promote resilient business models and sustainable land use. So yeah, I'd encourage you to read the document if you're interested. I'll put the link in the chat, and do get in touch with me if you want to chat about it. I think I'm handing over to Susie now, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we got here and why we really think this service is important. So Susie, if you're there, over to you.
Thanks, Hattie, and hello, everybody. I'm Susie Russell. I'm the coordinator of the Community Supported Agriculture Network UK, and also a member of the steering group or steering working group for Landmatch that's got the project up and running. I think there's a slide that sort of, maybe is it the next slide? That's the one. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk a bit about how we got to this amazing launch with all of you here, which is such a, I mean, it's been 4 years, I think, possibly a little bit longer in the making, and it's amazing to be here. So yeah, I think post-COVID at the CSA network, we noticed we'd had inquiries from Landseekers, and then we suddenly started getting inquiries from landowners. It was probably a combination of COVID and also Brexit, various different factors coming together. But we were getting a few, and we didn't have capacity or kind of a manner of dealing with them. And sort of informal chats with Land Workers Alliance, they had a notice board which was sort of being used, but not that much. But also noticing a few more landowners being interested. And yeah, just started talking to various different people, and it seemed like not only did sort of discovering that there had been a trial landmatch service in England that ran for 2 years, but that there were landmatch services in the other nations, and nothing currently in this country. So we sort of put out feelers, and Farming the Future really kindly agreed to support us to meet in Bristol in the summer of 2023. So representatives from 29 different organisations who we'd kind of gone out and said, if you think of anyone else that is, might be interested, please do invite them. So we ended up with 29 different organisations, including ourselves, the Great Project, Land Workers Alliance, the Organic Growers Alliance, Shared Assets, DEFRA, Soil Association Land Trust, Ecological Land Trust, Our Food, and many others, Lion, Land in Our Names, the National Federation of Young Farmers Clubs, the County Landowners Association. And we were looking at what was happening with land matching services in other nations. There'd been a report on the Scottish one that had just been recently completed. And also what we all wanted, like what did we need from a land matching service? And then out of that, there was a sort of self-selected working group, so everyone could join the working group. In the end, it ended up being Land Workers Alliance, ourselves at CSA Network, Tamar Grow Local, and Shared Assets. And then also the Institute for Agriculture and Horticulture, who had also been looking at setting up some kind of Landmatch website. So then that took us to 2024, and Farming the Future agreed to support us again with a slightly larger grant, which complemented a more significant sum of money that came from the Institute for Agriculture and Horticulture, which was around scoping the need for a service and setting up some kind of online platform for that service to happen. So we were sort of, Rachel, who was then entirely at Tamar Grow Local, had already been running a sort of pilot land match service. So we funded that the funding for that had run out. That was part of some DEFRA pilots, but we enabled that to carry on for a year and learned as much as we could from that service, whilst exploring how we would sort of A, fund, and B, actually roll out a more countrywide service. And then we applied to the Esme Fairbairn Foundation, and they amazingly funded us we applied for 5 years. We got funding for 1, but we're hopeful that we may get funding for more. We're also, as Hattie said, really hopeful that government decides that it is a worthwhile thing to have and funds the service entirely. But so Esme Fairbairn funded us to kind of continue the work in the southwest and expand it by having a more permanent regional coordinator. And then we also wanted to try it in a different area of the country, and we decided with discussion that we wanted to try something in the north. So we've got 2 pilots, one in the southwest and one in the northwest, with a regional coordinator in each who are here today, and then a central coordinator and a little bit of comms capacity. And so the steering group are still involved in the project, but kind of handing over the executive work to the staff team. And yeah, we're hoping to become a CIC in the future as a separate entity from any of our organisations, which will have its own governing structure. And also, obviously, this funding runs till the end of this calendar year, so we're really keen to secure funding to keep it going and ideally expand it. We are sort of thinking about the value of having regional coordinators and what those regions might look like, and whether as well the service kind of can tie in with other things like training, farm starts, the other bits that make small scale agroecological farming work in this country. And I think, well, actually, that brings me, so sorry, one bit I didn't mention was that alongside the Esme Fairbairn money for the core service, we also then reapplied to Farm in the Future, who funded us with a larger amount, and that work has allowed us to run the service on a slightly more skeleton form, but to run the service across the country rather than just in the 2 regions. But it's also enabled us to do some work to encourage landowners to get involved with the service and offer up land. So we're creating some videos with landowners. So it's a kind of peer-to-peer learning, which will be on the website. And then most importantly, we're working with Pathways to Land, because one of the things that we realised as we developed the service was just how incredibly hard it is to access land full stop. But if you're marginalised, it can be even harder. So Joe and Nicola have put together a programme of work which has come out of their organisation, Pathways to Land, and they're working with us to ensure that as much as possible we support marginalised land seekers to access land. And I'm going to hand over to Joe now, who's going to talk more about Pathways to Land.
Thanks, Susie. Hello, I'm Joe. I am a veg grower of 6 years, and I also co-run a project called Pathways to Land that Susie has already introduced. We were set up in 2024 partly to respond to the fact that the horticultural sector and farming in the UK is one of the least, if not the least, diverse sector in the UK. And we also wanted to build on some of the work that had already been done around racial justice in agroecology and farming, but specifically targeting land access as a specific barrier that Black people and people of colour tend to face when attempting to farm. So we had our first phase in 2024, which was really exciting. We produced a report based on interviews with Black and POC farmers across the UK, although it was limited by being quite centred around the southeast. And then we held some forums and created some themes around needs and barriers that Black and people of colour face when trying to access land for farming. Then kind of through that work, we ended up linking with Hattie and Landmatch England quite slowly, and then we ended up being involved in this bid to work together from the start of this year until autumn 2026 to put together a programme of support for Black and POC farmers, but also for economically marginalised land workers. So low-income land workers and people who are wanting to access land but don't have access to lots of savings or inherited wealth or anything like that, as another kind of way in which people are kind of like there are barriers for people accessing land in the sector. So from the beginning of February to autumn, we're going to be providing for a small group of around 10 individuals who are wanting to access land, and are marginalised. We're going to be providing online peer networking. We're going to be providing training sessions and also farm visits. And everyone who is on the programme is going to be paid for their time. We felt this is really important because people often take a lot of their time out to attend things like this, and sometimes that is time that you can't afford to take out. So people will be paid, and applications are still open, but only until the beginning of next week. So if you're interested and you want to hear more, then either get in touch with me, I'll put my email in the chat, but I'll also put the application form in there as well. And yeah, would love to hear from some of you if you're interested.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joe and Susie. And just a reminder to put any questions in the chat. And they are being expertly fielded by Hannah. Thank you, Hannah. I've also just put the QR code for the Pathways to Land page on our website. So feel free to give that a scan if the program might apply to you and you might be interested, or you might know someone else. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, I am now going to give a little bit of a rundown of how our service works. So I have a simple 4 steps here, which I'll take you through. So number 1, we ask people to register through our website. We have a very non-invasive form as step 1, where we just ask who you are, where you are, and whether you're a landowner or a landseeker, and your general aims and ideas, perhaps details of your land offer, or a little bit of detail about the business you would like to run. And it just gives us an opportunity to start sending you to the right person, the right coordinator, understand a little bit more about where you are and what you're looking for. And then we get in touch with you as coordinators to set up a chat and get to know you properly. This is a chance to talk together and really hear from you about what you're looking for and how we might be able to help you. So the next step is the support package. So I think I would sum up our support is a land matching service, and it's also everything around that. So we have things like support with your business plan and support with, what sort of agreement are you looking to have? What sort of land sharing agreement might you be looking at? We have, although we're not legal advisors and or land agents ourselves, we're facilitators, and we have an amazing resource library where lots of brilliant resources have been put together. Some of them specifically for Landmatch England, curated by some people in our steering group and some professionals and advisors and consultants. So we use the call to understand what we feel you need, and we'll be able to provide you with a few of those resources or point you to the right places to get what you need. Next is all that happens behind the scenes. So as coordinators, we're working to keep our ears and eyes out about what potential matches we can make. So we use maps as well as our big database and just the calls that we've had, people who we've listened to. We try our best to pick up on certain things like does someone have a certain constraint, or someone's looking for something really specific like a few trees that are already there that won't take many, many years to grow. And we try to match you up and put you in contact. We then take on the role of facilitating that initial contact. So in the Northwest and Southwest, that means that we'll be able to come along and support you in meeting potentially. And elsewhere in the country, it will more likely be a Zoom call where we try to take out as much as possible on the call and get you to just really understand each other and see if there's potential there for a match. And as that third party, we're also here if you have any worries, concerns, and perhaps questions and need additional support around that matchmaking. We don't just throw you out there. It's still a held service that we offer. And then the final part of how it works is creating the actual agreement. So as well as making sure that you're looking for the same things and you are aligned and you're getting on, we also want to signpost you to professionals to help create a binding agreement and make sure you've taken those necessary steps to make sure things are covered and both of you are accountable to an agreement. So this is, we have a lot of great things in our resource library. We have a lot of advice on how to make certain things and which options to choose from about that specific agreement. So we really encourage you to sort of formalize that match in the right way for you. So to give just an overview of what our service offers, I've sort of outlined it already, but we've got the one-to-one support. We have bespoke land matching services. We have all our resources, which include the resources in our resource library, as well as some online training webinars that we're planning to run throughout the year. And these are on topics of things like agroecology or legal advice or generally working partnerships. And then we have the additional support due to us being coordinators and based in the Northwest and Southwest, which is hopefully going to involve some peer networking as well as visiting events, meeting you in person, and generally being there on the ground nearby. We have only just launched our new website in mid-December, and I think that Rachel told me earlier she had a check and we have 53 applications already, which is an astounding number of people who actually want to get involved in this and are serious about looking for land or offering up their land. So I'm just super, super pleased with those numbers so far. And from the conversations I've had already and the matches that are on their way to being made already, we're just, yeah, really really happy to see it and really encourage those applications to carry on coming in. I've got a video now which I just want to show you how our website works, just so you can get a live action screenshot. So hopefully someone, Hannah, if you can put a link to our website in the chat, that would be really amazing. We've got lots of information that you might need to know, including this lovely graphic that I put on the slides there. We also have a blog and news page where we're hoping to update you with any key things that are happening. So interesting launch stories, some examples of enterprise stacking, what that means. Then we have a Q&A FAQs page where we fielded some of those questions that we thought we might get a lot. And there's a general FAQs as well as a Landseeker FAQs and a landowner FAQs. So I'd really encourage you to have a look at those. Then we have our registration page, which is sort of the key part if you're an interested landowner or land seeker. And we just ask you some of these initial questions. We also really encourage that you take a look at our terms of service to understand what the extent and the limitations are of our service, as well as our values on our value statement. And then we have our listings, which I'm going through there and just showing that you can filter in regards to area and types of farming. And we use the tools to sort of craft and personalize listing for every landowner or land seeker that comes in, unless they've already been found a match. But it's an opportunity just to have a look at what's out there already and get in touch if you see anything that might interest you. So a few quick questions just to make things really clear. I've just got a question about cost. So we're a not-for-profit service, but we offer a sliding scale fee to illustrate what could be possible from a bit more funding or what people might be willing to pay. And this is at the discretion of the applicant, and it's all obviously put back into the service. You can register from everywhere, as I think has already been thoroughly explained, but we have additional coordinators in Northwest and Southwest. And is it just for new entrants? So this work is largely leading on from lots of work to support new entrant farmers, but we support a whole range of people with whatever experience they have. We're really, really interested in tailoring the support to your level of experience and trying to provide you with information and signpost you to the right people to make sure that you're on board and yeah, that we move at the right pace, I would say. Okay, I hope that makes things a little clearer. And I'm going to pass over to Hannah, who has been keeping an eye on the chat for questions. Thanks, Hannah.
Hi there, everybody. Yeah, thanks so much for your questions that have been coming through. I've just taken a note of a few of them there. And so there's been some questions about just, is this going to be available? Yes, we're going to be posting it up on the website and sharing it with you all after the webinar. We've had a couple of questions about can we register if outside of the Southwest and Northwest? Yes, absolutely. We're taking registrations from all across England. The only difference is that there's regional coordinators in the Southwest and Northwest, but we absolutely are able to help you with the match across England, so that's fine. Chris was asking an interesting question about the website not showing so many of the detailed kind of segments of agroecological farming around maybe agriculture as opposed to like or horticulture as opposed to livestock. And it was definitely something that we talked about actually before now when we were designing the website. I don't know if Cordelia, did you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I definitely can. I think the question was sort of asking whether we're including forestry as well. We definitely recognise that comment, the options that we have for sort of types of farming. We've put in, we've taken an existing list that was used elsewhere for another project, which we found really useful in that project. However, we're super interested to keep our ear to the ground on what works for people and what popular and unpopular fields are coming up. And yeah, as I say, we've only just launched and gone through that initial user testing and stuff. So we are really keen to represent all of the sorts of production that we support. And we do definitely support woodlands and fuel and fibre and flowers as well. So those are all included. Really interested in making that more clear.
Yeah, thanks so much, Cordelia. Hope that's makes things a bit clearer, Chris. Yeah, we're absolutely supporting forestry. Yeah, and a focus on production from the land is also applicable with an educational side or other kind of community engagement work. So that can be kind of combined and often is to kind of create either an additional income or just that there's an interest in engaging with the community locally. So that's all good. Yeah, Vicky had asked about if you were involved in the Southwest pilot, should you register again? And yes, if you could please register again with us, that would be really, really helpful. It's good just to get you into our system, but also to show and demonstrate the demand for our kind of future funding bids and just to demonstrate how many registrations we're getting. So if you can, there, as Cordelia said, there is a sliding scale for our fee. It starts at 0 and top end is 50. So you can choose where you are placed on that. But yeah, please register. Joe has just posted on Pathways to Land a few of the links there for their call out. So someone was asking specifically where the QR code took you to. So Joe has actually given a few links there in the chat. She also says that if you're not based in the southwest or northwest of England, but plan to move to one of these regions in the next 1 to 2 years, then and you meet some of the other criteria, then you are eligible to apply for the Pathways to Land. So if that applies to you, then do get in touch with Joe and they'll be able to talk to you about that. Ben was mentioning there that he was keen to, enjoying that there are so many of us on here. I mean, there's absolutely loads of us on here, which is really exciting. And to, it'd be great for people to connect up and share opportunities, resources and training, all sorts. We are going to be running a kind of a WhatsApp network for the Southwest and the Northwest for Landseekers and landowners for people to connect in that way. And we will be running various events, in-person events and more webinars as well to help people to connect and network. Got a few more questions down here. Louise had asked about if it was possible to get support around land agreements. We can't give legal advice or support around the legal processes, but we have got guides in our resource library written by land agents and kind of looked over by legal assistants to make sure that our advice is right. And that advice will help you to kind of come to a checklist really of what you need to be thinking about when you're considering land agreements, which types of agreements are going to be suitable for your situation. And as you go through the land matching process, we'll be able to help you with that and just kind of advise maybe what would be the right thing to look at and what could be suitable. But if you aren't actually looking for land and or offering land, then the resources available there on the website for you to kind of search through and use freely. So do have a look.
Anna, can I pick up on a question in the chat?
Yeah, please.
From Eleanor, who says she speaks to farmers daily, many of which are quite old and don't have the internet. Numerous have no family to leave the farm to. Is there any plans in some way to help them? Just to note, we're still, our comms reach is kind of really ongoing. And we have purposely put on our website a landline number which comes through to myself in the Tamar Grow Local office to field people who don't want to use the internet or are unable to use the internet. And we can totally support people who want to call us. They would then be either supported by myself or by Hannah or Cordelia over the phone to be able to fill in forms for people who don't want to use the internet. And to be able to facilitate land matching in the same way, but without them using the internet. It's completely fine for us to do that. And if they're in the northwest and southwest, then we've got the extra support as well. And then thanks to Louise, who also gave a shout out for Biodynamic Land Trust in response to that question with the help for succession and advice around succession as well. So just wanted to respond to that quickly.
Thanks, Rachel. That's great. We've got a question here from John saying, have you thought about a community supported buyout so that eventually the land is owned by a CBS as a single entity with long-term leases to tenants? I think maybe we are we're working with landowners who have a whole range of different circumstances, so that might be appropriate for an individual landowner and something that you might want to negotiate or discuss with them individually. And it might be something that you might communicate in your listing, but perhaps not something that we would kind of cultivate, as we're not looking at the moment at people who want to purchase land in particular. We're looking at more kind of land share arrangements at the moment, and creating kind of new tenancy agreements and opening up land in that way instead. Does anyone else want to speak to that, perhaps, about the differences for a land match around buying and renting or tenanting land? Susie, would you like to speak to that?
I'm not sure what I can add. I guess, I mean, I guess, yeah, the service was set up with the idea of thinking about tenanting, but we're keen to see land transfer into ownership, especially by communities, and especially where it's local direct sales agroecological food. So we have been talking about how what we do about kind of including offers of selling land and how that kind of works in a land match context, because there's not that, although there's obviously or likely to be a relationship between the seller and the person who buys it or the organisation that buys it, especially if it's part of a piece of land or a farm where there's more, there's not necessarily that sort of ongoing relationship. So I'm not sure if that helps.
Yeah, no, that does. That gives a bit more clarification on that. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we do support a kind of those new and interesting uses of land and community use, but perhaps at the moment it's beyond the scope of this project. Jenny says, are you or have you considered adding a more automated and entry-level service of an app that allows people matching, as well as land and business skills matching, like a dating app without the dating, to help people find each other, to join based on categories to buy land together. So another buying land. I think there's quite a lot of interest in that kind of searching for land in that way. She's created some sort of software that might be able to support with that. So is that, Jenny, a sort of helping people? I suppose we are looking to network people together so that they are able to share skills and share information, opportunities through a kind of WhatsApp network. So we are hoping to do that. And yeah, I think the website was quite a feat already for us, and to get to this stage was great to be able to get a kind of web platform. But maybe in the future we'd look at something that was a bit more agile, like an app. Maybe when the funding is flowing our way, that would work. And also, yeah, if there was software developers that were particularly interested in supporting something like that, for us, that would be great. So thanks for that question.
Shall we move on to our
Yeah.
speakers, Hannah?
Yeah.
So that we can have lots of
spotted the 10 minutes up. So thank you so much for all those questions. We are really delighted to have two speakers, a Landseeker and a landowner, come join us and talk to us about their brief so far experience of Landmatch England.
I've worked through most of this. Is there anything else?
Oh, I think we need a, yeah, thank you. And they're going to share their a bit about their own businesses and why Landmatch is going to be hopefully successful for them. First, we have Holly Smith of Holly by the Hedge, based in the Cotswolds. Holly's going to talk from a Landseeker perspective. Holly's a really experienced land worker, a chartered surveyor and land agent, and is looking to expand her conservation grazing business into fibre and folklore. So if you could tell us a bit more about that, Holly, I'm looking forward to hear.
Of course. Yeah, hello everybody. So yeah, I've been really kindly asked to join this evening to give a bit of an insight from a Landseeker's perspective. And I thought it might be helpful to kind of skip back to the beginning. So I'm a first generation farmer. Neither my parents nor my grandparents farmed themselves. My grandma did grow up on her family farm, which is pictured with her great grandfather top left. You can't really see him. I think he's got quite sort of blended into the hay in the background. So that was in Ireland, but during the war she moved over to England and didn't return to live in Ireland. And the farm sort of went into other family branches, as it were. I did manage to visit a couple of times, but nothing more. So I grew up in a small market town in North Hertfordshire, so very different, in an area that was surrounded by National Trust woodland and farming landscapes, but obviously no direct connection to land working, as it were. I went to a local comprehensive school, which had absolutely zero connection to the rural world. So my prospects from a young age of working in the rural sector at the time were pretty non-existent. I just didn't know that those opportunities existed, and neither, it seemed, did the grown-ups around me. And you don't know what you don't know. So skip forward a few years, I did a very conventional thing, got a degree in English at university and got a job in a city, because that was what was available at the time and I didn't really know what else to do. After a couple of years sort of working in a basement, I started Googling how to become a farmer. And to sort of show how removed from the industry I was, I didn't know places like Harper Adams, the Royal Ag College, Reading existed for those sorts of courses if you didn't have a sort of direct link into family farms and similar. So I eventually attended an open day with a view to doing the Foundation Ag course. The reality of what I was met with was a barrier to entry that I hadn't fully anticipated. I was basically asked, do I own, or do my family own a farm that I will inherit, or will I marry a landowner or a farmer? And the answer was no, and absolutely no idea. And so I thought that had sort of put paid to aspirations of becoming an actual farmer. So as Hannah kind of mentioned, I completed the estate management course. I qualified as a chartered surveyor, and I've been a land agent for the past 11 years. And so that was my kind of way into the rural sphere, as it were. And it's been great. I've learned and continue to learn a huge amount, especially when it comes to land management and more so relationships with people. But it's never quite satiated that kind of need for touching soil, as it were. So to remedy that, for 10 years, I took a portion of my annual leave and went on a bit of a busman's holiday, lambing for a very elderly farmer in his 80s up in the Shropshire Hills. His flock numbered around 2,000 to 3,000 breeding ewes, which was an incredible feat. It was a very steep, excuse the pun, learning curve, but probably the most authentic introduction into a working family farm that I could possibly hope for. About 7 years ago, when I then relocated up to the Cotswolds, so Oxfordshire, my lovely landlords at the time, who had their own small holding, gifted me 2 of their ewe lambs as a farewell present and a sort of good luck. And it was actually the kick that I needed to dive headfirst into farming. I didn't have anywhere to put them, but that's where it began. And that's what sort of eventually grew into what is now By the Hedge. So I started with 2 ewe lambs, and eventually, once I'd saved up, I bought a beehive and did a beekeeping course or an introduction. And so a few years on, I now have a flock of around 35 sheep, which is not huge in the farming scale. And I sort of am constantly telling myself, you're not a proper farmer, but I'm trying to get sort of over that. So 35 sheep, half a dozen beehives, and we run occasional workshops focusing on primarily rural skills, old crafts, so wool spinning, peg looming, foraging and folklore, and also how to operate a flock that doesn't rely on cereals. It's much more sort of in keeping with seasonality. We slow grow hogget rather than sort of doing 14-week commercial, and there's no shade on any of that, but it's just how we prefer to do things. The apiary I operate now is my own. I'm a natural beekeeper. We're treatment free and we produce single estate raw honey. But I still don't own land, nor do I have any long-term rental agreements, in part because, frankly, I've not commercialised either of those enterprises properly, because at the time I didn't really know that was a possibility for me. I have a day job that pays, and as a priority needs to pay my bills, pay my mortgage, and look after my animals. So basically, if we go on to the next slide, we are landless farmers. And so I essentially beg and borrow. I don't steal the land that I need. Most commercial livestock farmers where I am aren't interested in those kind of fiddly bits of ground, the stuff that's a bit awkward or a bit small or a bit rough. And those are generally the bits that are fantastic for kind of habitat and conservation and all of the bits that probably a lot of people on here love and aspire to. So we have a number of small blocks of grazing, which is where I've tried to sort of grow my niche with various local landowners. A lot of people who have a paddock with their house that they have no need for. I mean, what a fortunate position, but they like seeing livestock on their land. And in return, we help lower their maintenance responsibilities by grazing off the grass, etc. It's definitely a relationship that I see as reciprocal. It's not just that I need land to graze for my animals and site my beehives. It's a lot more than that, but I think that's where it also has the potential to become slightly difficult to navigate, is where and how you align your respective values and objectives. From my perspective as a land seeker, when you don't have management control of the land you're working, it is complex and it's very much a learning process, and it's finding that balance between what's realistically achievable and what isn't, and what factors can we try to influence and what do we simply have to concede to. So our operations are run on small parcels under flexible verbal arrangements, allowing our land stewardship to remain responsive to soil conditions, forage availability, and seasonal pressures as best as we can. If it were down to me, I'd be farming solely organically, solely regeneratively, lots of buzzwords in there, but essentially what I mean is limited chemical inputs. I want to regenerate and improve and not deplete the land that we're being custodians of. However, everyone is at a different stage of their journey, and I think that's really important to remember. So as an example, one of the kind of most long-standing blocks of land that we graze, when we started, they wanted it grazed tightly. They didn't want, they wanted what we would refer to probably as sheep-sick land. So, really tight grazing, because otherwise it looked messy. 7 years on, they now completely understand that actually having things like varied sward lengths, topping thistles rather than blanket spraying, making sure there are extended rest periods and not stocked 365 days a year is a lot better for the earth, its habitats, and actually the longevity and health of the holding. So for me, I think that's the biggest consideration, is how two separate stakeholders can align your values. And I think it's important to address that from the beginning. And I think that's where Landmatch sort of comes in, really, as other than the sort of putting you in touch with those that have land and those that are seeking it, is how to navigate those sorts of considerations from the beginning. I think most of the land we now have access to has come through word of mouth. I've been extremely fortunate in that people have approached me, but only as a result of grafting through my social media platform, which is mini, but it's helped. My website, and attending local markets where I basically flog my excess wares, so honey that I make, beeswax products, wool, etc. Had something like Landmatch existed at the beginning of my journey, or even at school, I think it would have been absolutely life-changing to have known, I think, at that point, that there were opportunities for people who weren't born into or brought up in an agricultural sphere is huge. I'm very much at the start of my Landmatch journey, as Hannah said, but already looking at the opportunities that it's presenting is so fortifying. And to some extent, it kind of allows you to breathe a sigh of relief that actually the support is out there for the likes of me. So I don't think I've done very well, Hannah, sorry, at answering a lot of the prompts, or probably sticking to the time. But one of the questions I think that I was asked was, what have I learned through the land search journey, and what would I do again or do differently? And I think for me, it's actually knowing how kind and generous people can be, and that trust and honesty and respect and communication is paramount. And I think if I can pass on any insight from a land seeker's perspective to a landowner, it would be, to give people a chance. And I mean, if you're on this webinar, then you're halfway there. But there'll be no doubt people that can present you, full business plans and cash flow forecasts and everything in between. But I think ultimately it's about finding the people that are going to blend well with your values and your objectives. So don't discount someone if at first glance they don't shine on paper, because ultimately I think it's about a meeting of minds and a mutual mentorship. And I think that's where Landmatch is completely unmatched. You can use that.
Thanks so much, Holly.
So thanks for having me, and I hope that wasn't too dull, but
not at all. It was really, really interesting. Thank you so much, and really great insights into that experience. So thank you so much. We're going to come back to Holly with some questions after we've spoken to our or heard from our landowner. So if you'd like to get those questions into the chat, then we'll come back to you, Holly. Thank you so much. So moving on to our landowner, this is David Wolfe. He owns Wakelands Farm in Suffolk, and he's going to talk about how he's been doing enterprise stacking on his farm for some time, but how Landmatch England is going to be hopefully a useful resource for him. David, handing over to you.
Hello, nice to speak to everybody. I am going to start my presentation and end it by expressing my enormous enthusiasm for Landmatch. I think it's, I mean, as Holly said a moment ago, if only we'd had this 5 years ago when we started, we'd be in a better place now. My second point is that I slightly recoil from the label of being a landowner. I mean, that is the reality, but the sort of baggage and attributions that come with that are, I find, problematic. Let me just explain my history. So, my parents bought Wakelins in 1992. My dad had been an agricultural scientist working for the government, and this was his kind of hobby, retirement, scientific agricultural research project. Um, and then he died in 2019, and my parents died 2016, 2019, and my brother and I inherited it in 2020. So we inherited the 56 acres of farm that is Wakelins in Suffolk 6 years ago. And we realized quite quickly that, first of all, we were uncomfortable with the sort of private ownership bit, and we wanted to make it available to people, to give people access to land in a whole range of ways. Almost as a political proposition, but also we realized quite quickly that there was no way we were going to make it operate sustainably and productively and so on our own. We needed a lot of help or a lot of input or a lot of other people working there as well. So our project really has been about how we can make this relatively small area of Suffolk as productive as possible. In a whole range of dimensions around biodiversity and food and people and education and well-being and a whole range of things like that. So if you just look at the slide, just to give you some idea of the complexity of it, my parents planted agroforestry, so that's what the lines of trees are. But as you can see, there's a bit more of it not on this picture, but you can see immediately in that picture three different areas of agroforestry. So at the sort of top left of the picture is basically timber trees. The middle bit is lines of fruit trees, and you can see within that the polytunnels that I'm about to talk about. And then the east of that is short rotation hazel coppice. And then within the alleys is an organic rotation. And each of those is relevant to the way we've gone about doing our we use the word enterprise stacking. I know some people don't like that term, but I'll carry on using it for now. And then also relevant to our proposition is that you can see at the foot of the picture there are buildings, barns, and rooms that we can use as kind of meeting rooms and breakout spaces and a farmyard and spaces and so on. And what we've done in that area is we've converted some of those buildings into what you might call workshops and also a bakery kitchen. And all of those have ended up being part of our sort of what is now our land match proposition. So if you just go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So this is, and it is slightly an ever-changing group of people. This just gives you some idea of the range of people we have. And I'm going to keep using this expression, having access to the land. So they have access to our land and our buildings in different sorts of ways. And I think it's just slightly stretching the sort of narrow version of people having sole occupancy of an area of land on which to do farming or growing. So we do have some of that, but we also have a lot of people using land in other different ways. If you just go to the next slide, that is the enterprises for those different people. And there's one other which we no longer have that I want to talk about in a second, which is the sheep enterprise, particularly relevant to picking up what Holly was talking about. So just how those different organization people use our land. In a way, the most obviously kind of classic growing one is second, middle to the right, Wakelins Veg. So that is Jo, who has taken over an area of our land, and she has sole use of that area of land, and she is growing mixed horticulture in a no-dig arrangement that is literally her using that piece of land, and I have nothing to do with her operation of that piece of land. We support her, and we, as I'll describe in a moment, use the products of her land, but she has sole occupancy of that. To the right of that, we have the contemporary hempery. So that is two women who want to be growing and using hemp. Now, the way they use our land is that, as I described, we have an organic rotation on our land. And so within our 4 year organic rotation, in 1 year, any one field on the farm will be growing hemp. But it's not the same bit of the farm every year. That's what the rotation's about. So they have, as it were, a moving piece of land that moves around the farm. So 1 year they'll be in one area, 1 year they'll be in another area, the next year they'll be in another area. So they haven't got sole use of any one area, but we are able to give them access to an area where they can grow hemp within an organic rotation, where they don't have to worry about the other three phases of the rotation, and I don't have to worry about the hemp phase of my rotation, if you see what I mean. Then we have a completely different kind of idea of access to land. If you look at the left-hand column, Wakelin's nature. So Harry is an expert conservationist and bird person. He wants to run conservation events and bird walks on an area of land that he can get to know and he can be involved in the management of it. So he has access to the whole of our land basically to run courses and activities that people can come round and he can talk about the nature and talk about the birds. So he has complete access to our land, all of it, every now and then when he needs it. In the bottom row, we have Willow Phoenix. So they are willow weavers. So they have an area of our land in which they grow some willow, but we also grow more willow that they're not growing. But then they use some of our buildings for running their courses and events. So they have access to some of our land in different ways to do those different activities. So it's all about their access to the land. Then at the top, you have Wakelin's Fruit Press. That's another version of access to our land. So Janine wants to do an apple and fruit juicing operation. We had a problem, which is that we grow a lot of apples, which we couldn't economically harvest and turn into anything useful product-wise. I didn't have the capacity or the wherewithal to run a fruit juicing operation, and nor could Wakeland sustain a fruit juicing operation. We're too small. But we host two shipping containers for Janine, in which we've put some fruit juicing equipment and apple press and so on. And then Janine, every year, she harvests our apples and turns them into apple juice. So I get bottles of apple juice that we couldn't produce any other way. And then Janine uses the same equipment to provide an apple juicing service for other people. In a slightly different dimension, you then have Natural Habitat, which is in the top row. That is a small NGO, and they want access to all of our land in order to bring groups of farmers and school children and others on educational visits. So you see how different people are using different bits of our land in different ways, very, very overlapping. The other one, and she's sadly not with us anymore, I'm sorry, didn't die, she's moved on, was a woman called Rosie who ran an operation which sounds a bit like what Holly was describing. So Rosie had a flock of sheep, and she actually, I think, had sheep on 6 different locations, and we were one of them. So she came, she was with us for most of 2024 and 2025, and she had 30 sheep. And what she did, if you just go back 2 slides to the, if you can go back 2 slides to the picture of the agroforestry, you see the lines of trees there. What basically Rosie did was that she put an electric fence around, in each case, a line of trees and an alley. So that's an area of about 0.2 hectares. And she had her 30 sheep in that area, and she moved them about once a week. And they were brilliant for us because what the sheep did is they ate the thistles and the docks that were otherwise a perennial weed that we would have trouble dealing with. And it was in the summer, so they in the heat of the day they went under the trees and cleared under our fruit trees, which was fantastic. And then in the evening they came out into the alleys and they ate the thistles and the docks and the grass and they pooped and everything. And so she moved around. So we were able to give her access to the whole of the farm. She could move around every day, but she didn't need a big area of land on any one day, but she needed that rotation. So again, that worked brilliantly for us. So I really say all of these things just to to encourage people to think expansively about what access to the land can mean. I mean, we have the benefit of some buildings as well, but even just the land, there are lots of things that you can do on the land that don't necessarily require sole occupancy, that can fit within a farming system alongside others collaboratively and so on. And find ways of, as I say, making, in our case, 56 acres, that much more productive, whilst also giving people opportunities of access to the land, whether it's about food, farming, the environment, craft activities, folklore. I like that one. We also have a guy who does wild living, kind of forest school camp type stuff. So I think it's. I'm very excited. I said I would end on the same point I started with. I'm very excited about Landmatch because I'm hoping that that will give us, we have recruited reasonably successfully, but it's been by word of mouth and so on, an opportunity to better join up with a whole range of people who might be interested in our proposition, and who might be able to come and help base themselves at Wakelands and do stuff at Wakelands. Some of those people are very full time at Wakelands, some of them are very part time. And again, I would stress that the way Holly is working is a very good example, a very interesting example. And we have people doing similar to that with a job part time or full time, but also doing stuff with us. So I hope that just gives some sort of what's the right word? Expansive view of how imaginative. And I'm not saying there. I'm sure there are a million other ways of doing it than we've done it. And as has we've had some hiccups along the way. So there we are.
That was fantastic, David. Thank you so much. It was really excellent to hear how you're just integrating them all, like they're all kind of adding to the other. It's really wonderful picture that you painted there. So I'd love to get some questions in the chat for both Holly and David. Holly, we had just a comment, really lots of comments saying how fantastic a story you were telling there. Particularly interested in the kind of idea of the textiles, farming for textiles, and yeah, people loving that. Yeva had said, have you heard of Fibre Shed?
Yes, yeah, I have, and it's incredible. There's the fibre sheds southwest. What I'm finding difficult, I think, where I am is trying to kind of add value. And so they focus, I think, on blade shearing and things like that, which isn't necessarily always possible. There's a cost to it. So to do my flock, it was going to be something like £350, which, when you think of the price of wool anyway, it's another barrier. But they are brilliant in terms of what they're doing, and I think linking the sort of textile industry. I think the issue we've got as a whole is the lack of mills and access to kind of spinning fibre, and it's something I've tried really hard to approach producers, so people that are making, like, you know, the sort of natural pellets, you know, for slug resistance, rather than using slug pellets, they're using wool pellets as deterrents, for mattresses, for insulation. But when you're at my scale, it's difficult because people want reliability of several hundred fleeces. And so I think that's where Fibre Shed is brilliant, in that hopefully it will expand into sort of wider regions, which it already is, but in terms of almost forming a collective of these kind of small shepherds, growers, and I think that's where Landmatch is brilliant, is that actually it's finding those collaborative networks that actually on your own you can't access.
Yeah, I think this webinar is also just illustrating that there's so many people from all different walks and kind of finding each other here and saying, oh yeah, this is inspiring. Thank you for that. David, lots of people saying, brilliant, David, thank you so much. Go, David. This is so inspiring. But a question about housing for stacked enterprises. It's obviously a barrier that lots of people coming across, and especially if lots of enterprises on one piece of land. How are you managing that kind of issue?
Do you say housing?
Yes, like
I suppose two different ways. So first of all, some of the people who have enterprises at Wakelins live in the local area, and their activity at Wakelins is a part-time activity in association with a job of some sort. Yep. So they live in their own houses and whatever, and they come to Wakelins seasonally or periodically, whatever it might be. But the other thing is that we applied for planning permission in 2021, 2022 to get. So we can obviously, sorry, start again. We can obviously, like any farm over 5 hectares, have seasonal agricultural workers in caravans, and we do that for the summer with people who are volunteers. And that works reasonably well. But you can't have those people like that living all the time, because of the way the planning system works. So we apply for planning permission to have six. I mean, they're in law caravans, but they are for rural workers, and they're all year round. So we have planning permission to have. I mean, as you probably know, with a caravan, it can actually be quite big, and actually can be more like a cabin. And indeed, Amanda and I live in a cabin, which is basically, it's a caravan, because it's not permanent and it's movable and all the rest of it, but it's very decent size and very comfortable. So our answer is that we have accommodation opportunities like that, which, I think in practice we see them working this way. They're either temporary, or they are for people who are getting their businesses going. And we had an example of this with a woman who was working at our place as a baker. They're getting our businesses going, and then once they're established and making a bit more money and whatever, they can then move off site. So it's a sort of transitional incubation type of thing.
Yes. So yeah, and getting those businesses started can be really just that's such the important part of it, to help the beginning growth, and then yeah, income coming in.
But it was quite a fight to get the planning permission, I have to say.
Yeah, it takes time as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you have to hold on.
Yeah.
Caroline is actually asking for you, David, what kind of agreements you have with your tenants, if that's what
Yes, so that's a very good question. So they're all similar, but they're all different. The similarity is that in each case, basically they sign up to a set of commitments and values. So somebody else talked about this earlier on. We have a page on our website called Wakelins/values, which is a set of kind of what we believe in and how we behave and how we want you to behave, and everybody signs up to that, and that's a kind of mutual understanding, we hope. So that's the core of it. And then really beyond that, it basically says you have access to this bit and that bit or whatever it might be, in exchange for which you do this, that, and the other. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So they're very simple. They're not legalistic, and they're we hope very practical. I mean, I think there's actually copies of them on our website, but I'm very happy to share the basics of them. There's nothing clever about them. But the other aspect of that is that they are all very different. So then they're mostly not financial, I should say. So let me just give you some idea of them. I didn't when I talked before. I talk about our bakery kitchen team. So we turned one of our bits of barn into a bakery kitchen, and that's used by Nicola and Lindsay. And so they take produce from the farm, our wheat and fruit and vegetables that Joe grows, and so on, and they make food out of it. So that's a sort of short food chains process. So instead of us selling wheat, which would be pointless or unprofitable, they sell lovely organic sourdough, wood-fired oven bread. So they do that, and they're the most financial arrangement we have. So we're on a bit of a profit share with them, but that's the most financial. I mentioned Janine. So Janine, as I said, she picks and juices all our apples, and bottles them, and I get last this year it was something over 1,000 bottles of apple juice. So in effect, her contribution is she gives me 1,000 bottles of apple juice, which I can sell for £5 each at no cost, and I pay for the bottles. But then she gets to use the equipment for the other 11 weeks of the year and makes her money by providing a service to people who've got 10 trees in their garden or a community orchard or whatever. So that's the reciprocity. Some of the others give us their time. So they give us a few hours a week of their time, which we deploy in different ways. With Rosie, who had the sheep, unfortunately, she took them away. But our arrangement with her was that at the end of the year, so first of all, she was helping me with my weeding operations for no cost to me, which was a big saving because it saved me diesel and time and soil compaction and a bunch of things like that. But then my deal with her was at the end of the year, if she took any to be butchered, then we would get 10% of the meat. So that was the arrangement with her. So they're all very variable, and they reflect the different natures of the organizations, sorry, the enterprises. Some are more financial than others. Some more obviously have a product they can give us in exchange. But all of that is reflected that's reflected in each of the agreements. I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah,
I was going to say, without going to sort of talk about with my land agent hat on, because I don't think I'll be covered with insurance, but it obviously depends on if you have exclusive occupation. So from a landowner's point of view, it's whether or not it requires an agreement that then puts you at risk. And so that's probably where Landmatch comes in that you can identify what type of arrangement, and then when you're getting into landlord and tenant type situations.
Yeah. So we only have what do we have? We have a few bits, I suppose, of exclusivity in the sense that Joe has exclusive use of a big area where she grows. Others have it's more about buildings, it's workshops and things like that rather than land. But I have to say we don't worry too much about that.
And it's really
We
sounds
we,
like
we, we treat it as much more informal than that. So I think
yeah.
a land agent, I mean, anybody like that would probably spin with anxiety around our situation.
I would, but then I put my hat on as a Landseeker, and all of my arrangements are verbal. So
Yeah,
I'm
exactly. Our arrangement, I'm very
go.
happy to share. Our arrangements basically say you can do this at Wakelins in exchange for which you'll do this and you'll behave like this. And if you don't behave like this, there's a process by which we can get rid of you. It's as simple as that.
So there's an overarching kind of agreement, and then there's a kind of bespoke element where it's
Exactly
about
right.
an exchange or whatever suits that particular circumstances. And
Exactly
and I
right.
think that's really what we're advocating for through Landmatch as well, is that really making sure that you get the land agreement that matches your circumstances. Thank
I
you
don't
so
know if I can.
much.
I might be able to. Can I share my screen? I don't know if that's
I
helpful.
think we've probably got to go
Okay.
now,
Okay. All
because
right.
this was the last segment. We definitely have run over, but I did want to just mention to Holly a comment from Susie, who said that they're trying to get fibre CSA up and running with Fibre Shed to make the collective selling power stronger. So something to talk with Susie about, Holly, maybe.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to pass over to Cordelia. Thank you very much both for your input. It's fantastic to hear from you.
Okay, thank you so much. I am so happy with how this went and hearing from everyone today and seeing such an amazing amount of engagement in the chat. It's just so encouraging to see so many people come along. So thank you for giving your time and joining us in this evening session. I really hope that you've perhaps sparked some connections from this call. You've learned a lot about how we work and also from the experiences of the landowner and landseeker. Thank you, Holly and David. And yes, please do spread the word about us. We are accepting applications and we want to find as many matches as we can and really provide a great service. So we're really keen for you to head to our website, which is just there in the center of the screen, and follow us on socials if you want to keep updated with what's going on. I've also put the QR code for the Pathways to Land project, which was mentioned earlier by Joe, if you want to have a look and see if you're eligible for that. And as a final reminder, we will be putting the recording up, but we won't be able to share the chat because that has everyone's names in it. So I would strongly encourage you to take some time now to go back through the chat and jot down anything you think is really interesting. We will try and collect any good points, good quotes, and everything, but unfortunately we can't share it publicly. So please find all those links. Don't leave before you've got them, and thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. And thanks everyone for the lovely comments in the chat.